Untraceable, 2008. Now, this is a schlocky B-movie with no particular massive aspirations to be anything more than a straightforward thriller of the week type thriller, horror, sicko schlock movie. But it punches above its weight, and I do feel as though the makers of it are trying to make something slightly classier than normal for the genre. Now, I think simply by casting Diane Lane, the movie is automatically elevated because I don't even know if she's necessarily all that great an actress or particularly famous, but she does exude a higher class quality to her. So this schlocky B movie with Diane Lane suddenly becomes a much more classy proposition. I'm not saying she's not a good actress, I'm not saying that at all, I'm just saying for whatever reason, automatically the fact that she's in it, it becomes a more impressive production. And the director, Gregory Hoblit, I believe he has a few respectable credits on TV, and he made a couple of other fairly schlocky movies but perfectly decent. I could be wrong, I think he may have directed Fracture, which I have here, and if so, then that's, in my opinion, an impressive credit because Fracture is a really good movie. It was directed by Gregory Hoblit, so yes, this movie, which I strongly recommend, is a superior courtroom drama. So anyway, so it's got a slightly better than average director, a better than average actress in the lead, and the script is not too silly. These type of thrillers always have a bit of contrivance to them. Logic is never exactly real world watertight, so you have to accept that it is going to be slightly schlocky to some extent. But within the limitations of this schlocky B-movie genre, this is a far better than average example. It definitely punches way above its weight if it's considered to be just a schlocky B-movie, and it's a well-made movie that's just a bit classier than it really had to be. The kills are not particularly great, but it's fine. The movie has a good enough plot, decent enough characters, that the fact that the kills themselves are maybe slightly disappointing is almost irrelevant, because it actually holds together as a proper dramatic story, and the story itself hooks you in and keeps you entertained. Now, I've seen this movie several times, so it's not going to be scary to me watching it for, say, the fourth time, but I do have to assume that it was never very scary, maybe slightly tense, but I doubt it was ever a particularly scary movie. Broad strokes, borderline, this movie is better than you would expect it to be, and I would give it 8 out of 10. Right, now we're going to go into minor spoiler territory, just very, very minor. These are not full-on spoilers. In the past I thought the climax was anticlimactic, but not this time. I always felt that in the last 20 minutes the logic got a bit sillier and it became a bit more contrived, and the actual action climax itself was poorly staged and just a notch sillier than what we had seen before. But on this viewing I thought, no, that's okay, it's fine, it's not a great climax, and there is a bit of a stretch of logic. The killer just happens to manage to get inside the back of her car, and she looks pretty much in the back of her car. She does have a genuine look in the back of her car, and yet she misses that the guy was actually hiding in the car. He was just hidden slightly further out of view. That's a big contrivance, and her locked up in her own garage with her, I don't even know what kind of device it is, something that churns up the ground in your garden underneath her, and she's tied up above it. It's a bit silly looking in comparison to what we've seen before, but again, it's not that much different to what we had already seen. It's not that much more contrived or that much more sillier, so I thought it was fine. The movie is not a whodunit. It's not a mystery where the killer will be a member of the cast hidden among the other supporting cast members. So the movie shows up, the character, the bad guy, is shown on screen within about half an hour, and that's for the best, because there's no reason to hide him. The movie would gain nothing apart from creating a bit more mystery, but if the mystery's going nowhere because he does not appear anywhere else in the cast, then it would be pointless, aimless mystery, so there's no point to doing that. Interestingly, the movie has no actual empathy for the bad guy. The bad guy has a motive. It might be a contrived, silly motive or whatever, but he does have a motive which gives you some sympathy for him. He's doing these murders for a reason, and I, as a viewer, can have some sympathy for his motives, that he was pushed into it to some extent, or pushed over the edge into it because of the callousness of people. And the movie, none of the characters in the movie ever really express any sympathy towards the character when they discover his motive, and the movie itself just basically thinks, no, the guy's a sick puppy. And I do find that to be slightly odd. Curiously, the movie repeats the money shot of the motivating incident. The message of the movie is you shouldn't be looking at this. This was a horrible private thing and it's not entertainment, so you should not be looking at it. And yet the movie repeats that money shot for our entertainment at least once. I wouldn't be surprised if it did it twice, because it's a really cool image, and why wouldn't you want to look at it? So I'm not saying the movie or the makers were trying to make an intelligent, proper point and that the movie betrays its own message. I'm just saying it's a curious oddity that the movie, or at least the bad guy, preaches a message which has some actual merit to it, but the movie itself then violates its own message, or the killer's message. I'm reading too much into that, I am aware. I'm just saying though that the killer's killing people because of this image, because people are looking at this image, and the movie shows you the image more than once because it's a cool image. The visuals are a little dated looking. It has a very desaturated colour tone to it, so all the greens are quite dark greens and everything just kind of looks overcast and a bit grungy, and it feels very, I would say, digitally manipulated. The photography doesn't look like it was not actually shot to look like this. It's that desaturation to me makes me think of digitally altered cinematography. So I feel that dates the movie back to 2008. Also, of course, it's a technology movie because it's all about the internet and mobile phones and stuff. And 2008, probably filmed in 2007, so this was possibly pre-iPhone. So it's a slightly different era. It's not laughable. There's one or two shots of a mobile phone, for example, where you go, oh, look at that old mobile phone, and you might mildly chuckle, but it's not laughable. The technology hasn't become hopelessly dated. It hasn't become an unintentional comedy, because time has just moved on and the technology people are using is comical in its old creaky crappiness. So I would actually recommend this quite highly. I am not saying it's a good movie. It is definitely unambiguously schlocky, not particularly super logical or particularly intelligent storytelling with really, it's not a super intelligent, really respectable piece of work, but it is a entertaining film, and the horror genre has an awful lot of terrible movies in it. Anytime, in my opinion, when you can come across a good horror movie that you can actually say, no, that was good, then you should really embrace it, because they are vanishingly rare in the genre, because so many horror movies outright suck. Now that I think about it, Untraceable probably is part of the torture porn genre started by Hostel. If it is to be considered part of that genre, then it is definitely the more classy version of it, because the torture is pretty mild and it does not revel in it to any great extent.